Record. All right. So what I wanted to do was to just talk to you very quickly about linked lists, right? And
Okay.
so what I wanted to do, the reason that I wanted to bring this up is because, normally in that whole thing, right? You've already created an item class. I'm going to just kind of draw that up here. The item class is going to have two things. I'm going to end up drawing a pointer as a double box. The first thing is a string, right? It's like a string or something like that. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then this bottom one, which is the next, I put a double box here because it's really a pointer to another item, right?
Okay. Yep.
That feel good so far? All right. So let's go ahead and just say that this is, string A. I'm actually gonna, actually, I don't like that. Let's go ahead and do that one more time. Let's actually make that just an A as a string. Believe me that it's a string. Let's
Sounds good.
have that BB, so on and so forth. Okay, so if you remember something that I was talking about with pointers, I ended up saying, hey, pointers are really just numbers, right? So if we were to think about these as being locations in memory, I'm going to say that this one's at location 1000, maybe this one's at location 1100, right? And then let's say that we have another location at 1200 over here, okay?
Okay.
Right, and so if we were to have that, and let's say that we have a C here, really what we're trying to do is, what we would really be storing down here, right, in those next pointers is really the value 1100, right?
Okay.
Because that's essentially the location of where B is, and then B would end up having C. So then we're going to say, okay, well that is going to be the location 1200, right?
Okay.
We're good.
Yep.
All right. So, um, in terms of thinking about what you would end up doing with a linked list, your linked list, in order to make sure that it works correctly, is just um, going to be a pointer, right? It's going to be a single box that is going to be a pointer to essentially the beginning of your list, which we can end up calling head, or I end up referencing it a lot as start, okay? But really,
Okay.
it's just going to have that and or that start. So that means that essentially that's going to be 1000. Now, the reason that I wanted to bring this up is because when we think about, making a constructor, right, you can just go ahead and make start null. But then when you have to think about the destructor is a little bit trickier. Okay. The reason is because one thing you might think is, well, let's go ahead and just go and delete start, right? So you might end up having as your code down here that you're going to end up deleting start. If you end up doing something like that, right, what's going to happen is that you're going to end up deleting this value here. However, this is a problem, okay, because that was your only known link to B and C. Okay,
Okay.
so now these essentially become those sad bunnies that we talked about before.
Okay.
Okay, right? Um, so both of these end up getting into that little stage, right? Poor little guys. So what we need to do is instead, before we actually call this delete, okay, before we can actually call delete, which we are going to do, right? Before we do that, we need to make sure that we have access to that we have access to B, right? Before we can end up deleting A, we need to make sure that we have access to B. The best way to do that is to probably have that in some other pointer,
Okay.
right? If we create another pointer where we say, you know what, go ahead and store location 1100, which was here, right? Then now we can go back and we can delete item A. And even though there was a link over here to B, that's no problem because we have some other variable that already links to that, right? It already has this location.
Okay.
Okay. And so then you have to think about what's a good process, right? What's a good way for me to be able to, go through and continually make sure, right? Obviously, if we have 1100, we can't just automatically say, well, now let me go ahead and delete 1100 because then that leaves 1200 completely in the dark, right? So we need to kind of keep doing this process of like, making sure that we kind of hold on or get the next link right before we end up deleting any type of data. Okay. And so that's just a little bit of the trickiness that you have to think about from the destructor standpoint. All
Okay.
right.
Sounds good.
Okay. So just keep that in mind, right, as you're going through.